couple of different pumps and all the storage containers. So apply that to several other things. Procuring material. All that material you see, that's a bunch of cold weather gear, that was procured for them using some very forceful methods that made a lot of people, both Afghan and U.S. coalition side, all the way up in Kabul, pretty irritated with our regiment. But it worked. We got the soldiers their cold weather gear. This is an actual schematic. I waited about 2 weeks after demanding from one of the companies for a genuine engineered schematic on how to build a gas station. They were competing for a bid on a gas station. I said, you have to design it first. They can't just show up. It is a Tonka two-poop fuel distribution system. That is the schematic. I said, you know what, go ahead and build it. I'm not going to pay you unless it works. It worked. I think it's still working. It works better than the water bill. So, what I learned, some cultural differences are reconcilable, most are not. But most importantly, what I learned is that, and I learned this the hard way by trying repeatedly to approach these cultural differences head on. I've discovered that you can't do that. That you can't come to another person in another country and say, I'm sorry, your culture's probably wrong. You should listen to me. That doesn't go over well, even when they are kind of in agreement that they should at least listen to you. It just simply doesn't work. So, trying to craft a functioning organization out of a completely different culture, I learned a few things that are sort of workarounds. The first is that there, in my mind, is a difference between teaching and training. This is kind of the McIlvoy definition of these words. Teaching is a way of changing what a person knows. Training is a way of changing the way a person acts. Trying to reason with people in a different culture who speak a variety of different languages, whose educational background is much different than ours and not very robust, probably should have focused more on simple changes in behavior and a lot less of a focus on reasoning with them. But in order to do either teaching or training, you have to retain some kind of authority. There's got to be, the teacher or trainer has to retain the ability to make real demands of the students. Influence is a slow, will give you slow change. Authority won't. You can make quick changes with authority, but if you're trying to simply influence what the other party is doing, that's going to take you a really long time. This is a picture of Leon Panetta, who came to visit us on our camp with the general and one of our translators in the foreground. What I found is that we relinquished our authority to require, actually literally require things from our Afghans very, very quickly in the advising process, which put us in a position to merely influence the Afghans instead of making them undergo the behavioral changes that we knew were necessary to have a functioning organization. And the result of relinquishing that independence, but still being expected by our headquarters to produce real change, was a question of who's succeeding at this. Are the Afghans actually getting better at running their own military? Are we getting better at using what resources we have to run it for them? Who's actually succeeding here? When you relinquish your authority over the Afghans and their organization, or in any situation where the trainer finds that it's time to pull back and let them do it, there needs to be an understanding that real independence means that they could potentially fail. We were not in a position to let them fail. That would have been untenable for all kinds of reasons. But we had still given up our authority, and we had basically reduced ourselves to just sort of nagging them and advising them and talking to them, but we couldn't make any real changes in their organization. So at the end of it, there were some significant differences in the way they ran. But it was very difficult to know whether or not those differences were the result of our ability to manage them or their ability to manage themselves. Thank you.
So now we'll be segueing to Brian Haig's presentation, and he's going to discuss how his experience